Whether it's the established city of New Atlantis or a remote planet ready to be explored for the very first time, the pioneering spirit is at the very heart of what makes Starfield so exciting as a game. My name is Codiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're taking a deep dive into the major cities, remote worlds, and outpost systems in Bethesda's upcoming single-player RPG, Starfield. I'm excited to announce that Legacy Gaming is giving away copies of Starfield, and you can enter right now for your chance to win. To learn more, head over to our website legacygaming.gg and click on the News tab up top. Follow the instructions, enter for your chance to win, and good luck. If you're just checking out the channel for the first time, I'd recommend you take a peek at the first two videos in this series. So far, we've unpacked character customization, shipbuilding, space combat, companions, and a bit more. If you want a complete look at Starfield, you'll want to start back at that first video. Today, however, we're talking major cities, and one hallmark of any Bethesda game are the incredible cities and colorful factions players will run across during their adventures. Starfield is no different. As we've talked about previously, our part in this grand space opera takes place 30 years after a bloody civil war between the United Colonies and the Free Space Collective, the two largest factions in the game, but they are far from the only forces vying for power in this massive universe. The United Colonies' base of operations is called New Atlantis, and according to the developers, it's the largest city the Bethesda team has ever created, not just in sheer size, but in density of artwork, crowds, and quests. Needless to say, I imagine we'll be spending many hours traveling back to the Alpha Centauri system where New Atlantis resides as we crisscross the stars. From a design perspective, this is the most futuristic city we've seen in the game up until this point, but there is still a very real 60s flair that keeps everything from the buildings to the people grounded in the overall aesthetic of the game. One thing notable about the city is its use of verticality. So far, it's the only location in Starfield where you can see buildings towering over the people below, and the curvature and heavy use of cool colors, specifically whites and grays, really give you a sense that this is a space city. The people of New Atlantis value law, discipline, and the legacy of humanity, and believe they are the true children of Earth. This is where our story with Constellation begins, and part of the reason why we'll most likely be back here so often, as it'll be the crossroads to the overarching story within the game. Also tied to the United Colonies is the UC Vigilance, a massive military ship that players can visit, and while not a major city, I thought it was worth pointing out as there's a lot of hype around this particular location online. It's a massive military ship, and it appears it'll have some significance to the UC faction. But it does beg the question, why do the United Colonies still need a massive armada of battleships, especially decades after a conflict that is seemingly over? Something to think about. Within the Cheyenne system is Aquila City, the largest settlement controlled by the Freestar Collective. Keep in mind, the Freestar Collective is a loose collection of 3 star systems and much less structured than that of the United Colonies, at least as far as we know right now. As you no doubt can tell, there is a much different vibe to this city, seemingly inspired by the Old West back on Earth. There's also a clear connection to one of Bethesda's other games here, Fallout. You can see the inspiration pretty much everywhere, from the dilapidated buildings to the signage to the interiors of buildings filled from wall to wall with knickknacks and baubles. One interesting thing about Aquila City is that it's actually built on a relatively hostile planet, and while it is surrounded by a defensive wall, outside the city limits are feral aliens the developers lovingly describe as a cross between a wolf and velociraptor. Terrifying. Another city well frequented is called Neon in the Volley system. Originally intended as a fishing platform constructed by the Xenofresh Corporation, it's now a pleasure city with all the trappings of a place like Las Vegas, just in space. Neon has a really interesting backstory, and that will no doubt be a part of its narrative arc when it comes to questing. During its original fishing venture, the corporation discovered that one type of fish had psychotropic effects, allowing for the creation of a new drug called Aurora, which is only legal on Neon. Well, obviously, drugs sell better than fish, and the rest is kind of history. Neon doubled down on Aurora and thus thrived. As far as its aesthetic goes, it's a city clearly inspired by Shinjuku, Japan, one of the busiest, most vibrant cities in that country. And while we've only seen a small fraction of Neon, there's a strong East Asian influence that permeates everything from the buildings and artwork to the culture. Other cities that we know of include Cydonia, which is more of a mining facility than anything else, controlled by the United Colonies and located on Mars of all places. It's clear this is a place of industry with very little in the way of personal amenities. It's unclear just how big Cydonia actually is in the game, but we do know it's a location we'll have the opportunity to visit. Another interesting location is called the Red Mile in the Parima system. Based on everything we know of this strange location, it's centered around some extravagant and most likely deadly race where players enter some sort of space obstacle course and compete for their life. It's unclear who heads up the operation here and what exactly its occupants are doing. Across the internet, speculation abounds about it being a casino surveillance operation, others a death race, but one thing is for certain, it'll sure be exciting when we eventually do find out. Finally, I wanted to mention the Key and the Crick system, home to the Crimson Fleet. The faction are essentially space pirates, and while I'm sure they're motivated by credits, they're not quite the mercenaries of another faction, the Ecliptic. Once a United Colony star yard, the Crimson Fleet clearly have a desire to overthrow the established order, no matter what it takes. It's a ruthless group of thugs, and while I'm sure you can align with them, you'd better watch your back. Cities and established locations will no doubt be the center of questing and interesting interactions, but it's the great beyond that I'm sure will entice a great many of you excited to check out Starfield. As you no doubt have heard, Starfield will have over 1,000 planets for players to explore, more than any other space game currently released. Each will challenge players with unique obstacles, as well as entice them with potential opportunities, but it's up to each individual to navigate the stars and explore every planet. Previously, we've discussed how players will move between stars using their ship's grav drive to jump between systems, but now I think we need to drill down a bit deeper to the system and planet view and talk about what to expect before landing your ship on the surface of an alien world. Within the system view, you can see all of the planets in a star system, and at a glance, glean important information necessary before touching down. In a recent interview with Kinda Funny Games, Todd Howard confirmed that only about 10% of planets will have life on them, and in this view, you're actually able to see if a planet has flora, fauna, and water. You'll also get a sense for what resources are on the planet, which could help inform where you set up your outpost. If we zoom in a layer, we can see even more about a specific planet, including any points of interest that might entice you to visit the surface. It's here where you can choose your landing spot, or fast travel to a known location. Planetary View also allows you to toggle on a resource overlay, which shows you exactly where a planet's resources are located, so you don't end up wandering the entire planet searching for something specific you might need. If a planet does have life, that is, flora and fauna, it presents a unique opportunity for you, as the player, to survey the planet. By surveying an entire planet, you'll receive a healthy chunk of credits that you can then use for any number of things. The planets themselves are procedurally generated, so no two experiences on any given planet will be exactly the same. That being said, not everything is procedurally generated, and all of the major set pieces and of course main story elements are handcrafted. It's hard to nail down exactly how the procedural generation works, and that goes for the flora and fauna as well. The team has said that there are a set of rules that dictate how and what generates on each planet, but from game to game, players may encounter different things. This is also true for the buildings. You may experience a set of points of interest on one planet, but someone else may encounter those same points of interest somewhere else. Again, there is a set of complicated rules that dictate this aspect of exploration, and truly, it's the secret sauce that could make the Starfield experience one of a kind. Truthfully though, we don't know how deep this system goes, or how it's dictated. That's a secret only the developers know, and at this point, it's unlikely they'll share the inner workings of something so monumentally important to the game. What was showcased was a player fully exploring and clearing a point of interest, and by all accounts, this looks like an incredible way to score some important gear on your adventure. There's no way you'd ever want to miss out on exploring a deserted robotics lab, but the risk does have to be worth the reward, and the developers showcased in this instance what the player was able to obtain: a legendary piece of loot, an incendiary calibrated deep mining space helmet. Now, if combat isn't your thing and you prefer a more peaceful approach to your planetary exploration, then there's always surveying. As I mentioned before, by completely surveying a planet, you'll gain credits, but there's also a benefit to surveying flora and fauna, to better understand their nature, where else you can find them in the galaxy, and most importantly, what resource they'll yield when harvested. Surveying isn't a challenging task. You simply pull out your viewfinder, aim, and scan. It's a simple system that I imagine some will find tedious, others incredibly satisfying and rewarding. there is certainly no shortage of things to survey, from points of interest and abundant flora and fauna that will feel natural to the exotic worlds players will soon visit. While surveying, there's a good chance you'll become enamored by a specific planet, and that's okay too, because Starfield's Outpost System allows you to set down roots on nearly every world you visit. Again, this is a Bethesda hallmark at this point, with base building systems becoming a constant in their last few games. This time around, things are a bit different as we're creating futuristic habitat modules, not slapping up ramshackled walls and calling it a home. From a gameplay perspective, the most interesting aspect of Outposts are the extractors, which allow you to passively harvest resources natural to the planet. If you find the right location and set up the base in the right way, I imagine this will be incredibly lucrative. Once your outpost beacon is established, the sky is really the limit, and one of the new features introduced by the developers into Starfield is a fly cam that allows players to build from a top-down perspective. You can still build in first or third person mode, but this is a new vantage point for players to explore. As you can see, there are at least 12 categories of outpost buildings and decorations that players will have access to. And while on the macro level, habitats, or habs as they're called, will provide the overall structure, flow, and functionality of your outpost, you can still add and tweak more decorative things like couches and statues so that your outpost feels like the space home you've always dreamed of. While not entirely known, there are serious gameplay implications for having an outpost established, and as you can see in the build menu, certain habs will have limitations on how many you can deploy at a single outpost. I imagine anything that allows for research or resource regeneration will have upper limits, as it would be a bit broken to create the world's largest space farm on some distant moon. Hilarious, but a bit broken. Previously, we talked a bit about companions, and they can be assigned to your outpost to help maintain your remote base when you're not around. We don't know exactly what gameplay bonuses having companions work outpost will achieve, but we do know that outpost engineering is a skill companions can have, and if I were to guess, I would imagine it increases the overall speed or output of various stations around your base. And I want to point out, while not said out loud anywhere that I can find, based on the various menus we've seen leading up to launch, it's clear players will be able to have multiple outposts scattered across multiple planets, perfect for the entrepreneurial space farmer in all of us. Hopefully it's clear, exploration is at the very heart of the Starfield experience, and while it's certainly not the only thing driving the game forward, it's easily one of the most accessible and exciting aspects of the game. Whether your goal is to align yourself with a faction, explore a major city, or set up an outpost, there's something to explore in every corner of the galaxy. There's so much more to unpack ahead of Starfield's launch, and we'll be tackling it all, so if Starfield is on your radar and you're excited about more videos like this in your feed, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. Our team plans on covering Starfield from top to bottom, so be sure to keep it right here for more content. We also invite you to join us on Discord. Our community of nearly 20,000 strong is a great place to hang out, talk about games, win free prizes, and group up. If that's something you're interested in, check out the link below. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.